When a relationship comes to an end, we tend to focus on the love that was lost. But what if that's not the most important part of the story? What if the real story, the real test, is about what happens after the love is gone? It's about who we are when things get tough.
So let me just ask you that straight up. When everything you've spent years building with someone starts to crumble, what's really being tested? Is it your heart? Your patience? Your wallet? It's a heavy question for sure. But the answer? Well, it might not be what you think. And here it is. This is the core idea we're digging into. The ultimate test isn't about whether you could save the love. It's about whether you can save your own integrity, your own character, through the storm. It totally reframes a painful ending. It's not a failure of love. It's a challenge to who you are at your core. To really see what this means in the real world, let's get into the story of a couple, Bilal and Hina. They found themselves facing this exact test, and they had to make a choice that would define them long after their marriage was just a memory.
Their story started out pretty normal, full of warmth and simple joys. But around year 4, those little misunderstandings started to pop up, creating these small cracks. By year 7, those cracks had become a canyon. The warmth was gone, and all that was left were arguments and this huge emotional distance.
For Hina, the problem was a deep, fundamental lack of connection. Can you imagine how that feels? She felt completely and totally unheard, like she was shouting into a void. You can just feel the frustration in that one sentence. But then, on Bilal's side, it was a totally different story. For him, it was about respect, about accountability. He just felt like he was constantly being blamed for everything, that he could never do anything right. So they were stuck, right? Trapped in this brutal cycle where neither person felt seen and every single conversation just proved them right. And then, of course, it happened. In the middle of another fight, Bilal says the one word that changes everything: divorce. And the room just goes silent. But what Hina did next, it wasn't what you'd expect. Instead of escalating the fight, her response changed everything. It put them at a crossroads, with two completely different paths in front of them. Wow. I mean, just think about the power in that one sentence. With those few words, Hina completely flipped the script. This was no longer a battle to be won. It was a process to be managed. She basically turned a declaration of war into an invitation to find some kind of respectful peace. And this lays out their choice so clearly. The path of revenge, that's the easy one, right? It's the one everyone pushes you towards. Your friends, your family, they all say, get what you deserve, or don't let them win. But Hina pointed them down the other path, the path of justice, a path that's not about winning, but about acting with integrity, even when it is the absolute last thing you feel like doing. So, before lawyers or courts got involved, they met up one last time. Not as husband and wife, but just as two people who had to figure out how to close this huge chapter of their lives. And in that meeting, they decided to define justice on their own terms, not for anyone else. And what's so brilliant here is that they created their own rulebook. Just a simple 3-step guide to get them through this incredibly painful time. So let's break down what each of these actually meant for them. Okay, first up, fairness over emotion. Let's be real, this one is so hard. When you're hurting and you're angry, your first instinct is to lash out, to punish. But they made a very deliberate choice to be honest. They split up their finances fairly. No hiding assets, no trying to manipulate each other. Bilal even said later that he could have taken advantage of the situation, but he knew it wasn't the right thing to do. That right there is integrity in action. The second principle was respect. And Hina's words here just say it all. They made a pact that the pain of the ending didn't give them a free pass to destroy each other's reputation. And that led right into their third principle, protecting what matters. They agreed not to trash talk each other to friends and family. By doing that, they protected their loved ones from getting dragged into the mess, and they saved those really important relationships. But look, having a map, these principles of justice, that's one thing. But you still need the fuel to actually make the journey. And for them, that fuel was patience, and it was by far the hardest part of their whole agreement. And let's be super clear about what we mean by patience here. This isn't about pretending you're not angry or hurt. Oh, those feelings were very, very real. Patience, for them, was about feeling that anger, really acknowledging it, and then making a conscious choice to not let it drive their actions. This is such a perfect real-world example of that. One day, Bilal was furious, and he typed out this long, harsh, angry message to Hina. He was ready to hit send. But then, he just paused. He thought about their agreement, about the path they chose together, and he deleted it. He knew that one moment of venting would just cause so much more damage. That pause, that tiny moment of control, that was everything. So after all of this hard work, what was the outcome? Well, their divorce was finalized quietly. There was no big public drama, no nasty court battles, no leftover bitterness that would poison them for years. It wasn't a win for either of them, not in the usual sense. The victory was something so much bigger. I mean, they couldn't have said it better themselves. This quote just sums it all up. Justice was their roadmap. It gave them the rules to keep things fair. But patience was what kept them on that road, stopping them from swerving into ugly territory every time their emotions flared up.
And this brings us right back to the beginning, back to that real test. Their story shows us that a painful ending is more than just a legal process. It's a series of moral questions you have to answer for yourself. Can you be your best self when you feel your absolute worst? And this idea, it goes so far beyond divorce. It applies to any major loss or conflict we're ever going to face. When you're in the thick of it, when you're just drowning in emotion, it is so important to remember this one simple truth. That intense heat of anger, that powerful urge for revenge, it feels like it will last forever, but it won't. It will fade. But the choices you make in that heat, those last. The words you use, the actions you take, they stick around. They leave scars. The real win isn't walking away with the most stuff. The real victory is walking out of the fire with your character still in one piece. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. When things fall apart, when you feel wronged and completely justified in your anger, what's the one thing you'll fight to save? It might not be the relationship or the money or even winning the argument. It might just be your own integrity.